Black sisters denied first class, until their silent so dad shocked everyone. "You two don't belong here." The flight attendant's voice cut through the first-class cabin like a knife, her perfectly manicured finger pointing directly at 12-year-old Mia and Mia Richardson. "This section is for premium passengers only." The twin sisters froze in the aisle, their matching backpacks suddenly feeling heavier on their shoulders. Around them, heads turned. Eyes locked onto the only two brown faces in a sea of expectant stares. Maya's hand instinctively found her sister's, their fingers intertwining the way they'd done since they were babies sharing a crib. "But we have tickets," Mia whispered, her voice barely audible over the overhead announcements. She held up their boarding passes with trembling hands, the words, "Seat 2A" and "Seat 2B" printed clearly in bold letters. The attendant didn't even glance at them. "I'm sure there's been some mistake. Economy class is that way." She gestured toward the back of the plane with a dismissive wave that made Maya's stomach turn. They were supposed to be excited. This trip to the National Junior Inventors Convention in Chicago was the culmination of 2 years of hard work. Their solar-powered water purification system had beaten out 3,000 other entries. Their mother had kissed them goodbye at security just 20 minutes ago, tears of pride streaming down her face. Their father was already in Chicago, waiting to surprise them at the convention center. But now, standing in this airplane aisle with everyone watching, Maya felt something she'd never experienced before. Shame. Not because of anything they'd done, but simply because of who they were. "We're not moving," Maya heard herself say, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. "These are our seats." The attendant's expression hardened. She pulled out her phone, her thumb already dialing. "We'll see about that." Now, you might be sitting there thinking this doesn't happen anymore, that we've moved past this kind of treatment. But before you click away, ask yourself something. If you truly believe racism has no place in our world, if you've ever felt the sting of being judged before you even opened your mouth, if you think every child deserves to chase their dreams without someone blocking the aisle, then you need to hear what happened next. Because what these 12-year-old girls did in the face of humiliation, and who was watching from 3 rows back, changed everything. Have you ever been treated differently because of how you look? Tell us in the comments where and when it happened. Your story matters. And if you believe nobody should ever hear those words, "You don't belong here," then hit that like button and subscribe to the Hyper Racism channel, because we're exposing these moments that too many people pretend don't exist anymore. What happened in the next 60 seconds would make national headlines. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The phone pressed against the attendant's ear felt like a countdown timer. Maya could hear her sister's breathing quicken beside her, that little hitch Mia always got when she was trying not to cry. They'd practiced for this trip for weeks. Practiced their presentation about how their invention could bring clean water to communities without electricity. Practiced answering questions from judges. They'd never practiced this. Behind them, a woman in a cream-colored business suit shifted uncomfortably in her seat. An older gentleman lowered his newspaper, peering over his reading glasses. The cabin felt smaller suddenly, the walls closing in as the attendant spoke in hushed, urgent tones to whoever was on the other end of that call. Maya's mind raced back to 3 months earlier, to the moment everything changed. She remembered sitting at their kitchen table, the one with the wobbly leg their father always said he'd fix but never did. The acceptance email had arrived at 6:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. She knew the exact time because Mia had screamed so loud that their mother dropped an entire pot of spaghetti on the kitchen floor. Their father had been away on business, the way he often was. He traveled constantly for work, something the girls had grown accustomed to over the years. Sometimes he'd be gone for a week, too. Their mother would pack his simple black carry-on, kiss him goodbye at the door, and tell the girls, "Daddy's building something important." They never quite understood what that meant, only that he always came back tired but smiling, always with stories about different cities and the interesting people he'd met in airports. What made their invention special wasn't just the science behind it, it was the why. When Maya and Mia were 7, their grandmother in rural Mississippi had gotten sick from contaminated well water. They'd driven down to see her, watched their mother boil pot after pot of water on an old stove, explaining that Grandma's well wasn't safe anymore, but she couldn't afford the filtration system the county recommended. Their grandmother recovered, but something shifted in the twins that summer. They started asking questions. Why can't everyone have clean water? Why did it cost so much? Why did Grandma have to choose between groceries and safety? 5 years later, hunched over their shared desk in their bedroom that overlooked the community garden their mother tended, they'd found an answer. Solar panels. Ultraviolet purification. Materials that cost $43 and could be assembled by anyone with basic tools. Their science teacher, Mr. Chin, had helped them submit to the convention. He'd stayed after school for months, believing in 2 quiet girls who asked too many questions. Now those same girls stood frozen in an airplane aisle, their achievements suddenly meaningless in the face of someone who decided they didn't belong before even checking their tickets. "Miss, please," Mia tried again, her voice cracking. She was always the diplomatic one, the twin who smoothed over conflicts, who found compromise. "If you just look at our boarding passes—" "I know what your boarding passes say," the attendant interrupted, finally lowering her phone. "What I need to understand is how 2 children ended up with first-class tickets they clearly can't afford." The words hung in the air like poison. Mia felt heat rush to her face, that terrible burning sensation that started in her chest and spread outward. Can't afford. As if their worth could be measured by the attendant's assumptions. As if their brown skin came with a price tag she'd already calculated. Their father had bought these tickets. He'd called their mother 2 weeks ago, his voice excited in that careful way he got when he was planning something special. "Book them first class," he'd said. "They earned it. Let them see that hard work opens doors." Their mother had argued, saying the extra money wasn't necessary, but he'd insisted. "Linda, our girls invented something that could change lives. They should fly like the innovators they are." Mia could picture him now, probably sitting in some hotel in Chicago, checking his watch, waiting for their text that they'd boarded. He'd taught them to stand up for themselves, to be proud of their accomplishments, to never let anyone make them feel small. But standing here, with dozens of eyes boring into her back, Mia felt very small indeed. The attendant crossed her arms. "I'm going to need you to return to the gate. We'll sort this out there, and if everything checks out, we'll get you on the next flight." "The next flight?" Mia's voice rose despite herself. "The convention starts in 4 hours. That's not my concern." Something twisted inside Mia's chest. She thought about their presentation slides loaded on Mia's tablet. She thought about the judges who were expecting them. She thought about Mr. Chin, who'd used his own money to help them build their prototype. She thought about her grandmother, who'd called them last night, her voice shaking with pride, saying, "My babies are going to change the world." And she thought about every time her father had told them, "The world will try to make you doubt yourself. Don't let it." "We're not leaving," Mia said quietly. The attendant's face flushed red. Her hand moved toward her radio. That's when a man in seat 5C stood up. Then a woman in 3A. Their expressions weren't supportive. They were impatient, annoyed, and ready to take the attendant's side because their flight was being delayed by 2 children who didn't know their place. But nobody noticed the man in seat 4D. He sat perfectly still, his newspaper now folded on his lap, his eyes fixed on the 2 girls in the aisle. His jaw was clenched so tight that a muscle twitched in his cheek. His hands gripped the armrests until his knuckles went pale. He hadn't moved, hadn't spoken, but he was watching everything. What happened next would depend on a choice. The girls could walk away, accept the humiliation, protect themselves from further confrontation. Or they could stand their ground and face whatever came next. Mia squeezed her sister's hand 3 times. Their secret code since they were 6. "I love you. We're in this together." Mia squeezed back 3 times. The attendant raised her radio to her lips. And the man in 4D finally moved. The man in 4D rose slowly, deliberately, like someone who'd made a decision he couldn't take back. He was tall, dressed in a simple black polo and khakis, the kind of outfit that didn't draw attention. His close-cropped hair showed hints of gray at the temples. He moved into the aisle with the quiet confidence of someone who'd walked through much worse than an uncomfortable airplane cabin. But he didn't say anything. Not yet. Mia watched him approach from the corner of her eye, her heart hammering against her ribs. Was this another passenger coming to complain? Another voice telling them they didn't belong? The attendant noticed him, too. Her posture straightened, her professional smile snapping back into place like a mask. "Sir, I apologize for the delay. We're handling this situation, and we'll have you in the air shortly." He nodded once but didn't return to his seat. Instead, he positioned himself slightly behind the girls, close enough that they could feel his presence but not so close that he was crowding them. He still hadn't spoken. His eyes moved from the attendant to the girls' boarding passes, which Mia still clutched in her shaking hands. "As I was saying," the attendant continued, her voice taking on a harder edge now that she had an audience of supporting passengers, "these young ladies need to return to the gate so we can verify their tickets. I'm sure it's just a simple booking error. Perhaps their parents made a mistake when purchasing." "There's no mistake." Mia's voice was stronger now, though tears rimmed her eyes. "Our father bought these tickets. He wanted us to have them because we're going to the National Junior Inventors Convention. We're presenting our project to—" "I'm sure that's a lovely story," the attendant cut her off with a patronizing smile that made Maya's blood boil. "But you have to understand, sweetie, first-class tickets are expensive. Very expensive. And we have protocols when something doesn't seem quite right." Something doesn't seem quite right. The words were careful, calculated. Never directly saying what she meant, but everyone understood. Two black girls in first class didn't look right to her. Didn't fit her picture of who belonged in these seats. Maya had heard her parents talk about this. Late at night, when they thought the girls were asleep, she'd heard her mother's frustrated whispers about being followed in department stores, about being asked for extra identification at the bank, about the 1,000 tiny cuts that came from people's assumptions. Her father's voice would rumble low in response, "We shield them when we can, Linda. But we can't shield them forever. The world will show them eventually." The world was showing them now. "What protocol?" Maya asked, surprised by how steady her voice sounded when everything inside her was shaking. "What exactly seems not quite right?" The attendant blinked, clearly not expecting to be questioned. "Excuse me? You said you have protocols when something doesn't seem right. I want to know what specifically seems wrong." Maya held her ground, her hands still locked with Mia's. "Our boarding passes match our seats. Our names match our IDs. So what's the problem?" The cabin had gone completely silent. Even the overhead air vents seemed to hold their breath. The woman in 3A shifted uncomfortably. The man in 5C who'd stood earlier slowly lowered himself back into his seat, his expression uncertain now. Somewhere in economy, a baby cried, the sound muffled by the curtains separating the cabins. The attendant's smile tightened. "The problem is that I need to verify your tickets are legitimate. That's standard procedure." "For everyone?" Mia asked quietly. "Or just for us?" The question landed like a stone in still water, ripples spreading through the cabin. A few passengers looked away. Others pulled out their phones, suddenly very interested in their screens. The truth was ugly when you said it out loud, when you made people acknowledge what they were witnessing. "I don't appreciate your tone," the attendant said, her professional veneer cracking. "I'm trying to do my job, and you're being difficult." "We're being difficult?" Maya felt something break open inside her chest, all the fear transforming into something sharper, something that demanded to be heard. "We showed you our tickets. We've been polite. We've explained why we're traveling. What more do you want from us? Have you ever had to prove you belong somewhere that you had every right to be? Ever had to justify your presence while others walked past without a second glance? Drop a comment if you've ever been in Maya and Mia's shoes, because what happened next is something every person who's faced discrimination needs to see. "What I want," the attendant said, her voice dropping to something cold and hard, "is for you to stop causing a scene and follow instructions. Now, you can either walk off this plane on your own, or I can call security to escort you off. Your choice." The threat hung in the air. Security. The word carried weight, carried implications. Two 12-year-old black girls being escorted off a plane by security. Maya could already see the headlines, the assumptions, the way their names would be dragged through social media. She could see their mother's face crumpling when she got the call. She could see their dreams of the convention dissolving. Mia's hand trembled in hers. Her sister, her other half, who'd stayed up countless nights working on their invention, who'd sacrificed birthday money for supplies, who believed so deeply in making the world better. Mia didn't deserve this. Neither of them did. Maya opened her mouth, ready to surrender, ready to accept defeat, because sometimes that's what survival looked like. Sometimes you had to swallow your pride and walk away to fight another day. But before she could speak, the man from 4D finally broke his silence. "Check the tickets again." His voice was quiet but carried authority, the kind that made the attendant pause. She turned to him, irritation flashing across her face at the interruption. "Sir, this doesn't concern you." "Check the tickets again," he repeated, his tone unchanged. "Look at who purchased them." The attendant huffed but snatched the boarding passes from Mia's hands, her eyes scanning the paper with theatrical exasperation. Her gaze moved to the bottom of the pass, to the passenger details, to the purchase information. Her face went white. The color drained so quickly it was almost comical. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. The boarding passes shook in her hands. "I don't," she stammered. "What's wrong?" the woman in 3A called out, craning her neck to see. The attendant couldn't seem to form words. She looked from the boarding passes to the man in 4D, then to the girls, then back to the passes. Her thumb traced over something printed there, something that had been there all along if she'd bothered to look. The man stepped forward, still calm, still controlled. "Would you like to tell everyone what you just saw? Or should I?" The attendant's hand moved to her throat. "Mr. Richardson, I didn't realize." Richardson. The name echoed through the cabin. The same last name as the girls. Maya's breath caught. She turned to look at the man properly for the first time. Really look at him. The shape of his jaw. The way he stood. The familiar intensity in his eyes that she saw every time she looked in the mirror. "Dad." Mia whispered. But the man held up a hand, a gentle signal for silence. He wasn't done yet. His eyes never left the attendant's face, watching her squirm, letting the moment out until the tension became unbearable. "These are my daughters," he said softly. "And I'd like to know why you're threatening to have my children removed from seats I purchased for them." The attendant's mouth worked soundlessly. Around them, passengers were pulling out phones, no longer to avoid the confrontation but to record it. This was about to go somewhere she couldn't control. There was a misunderstanding." "No," he said, his voice still quiet but now edged with something that made the attendant step back. "There was no misunderstanding. You understood perfectly. You saw two black children and decided they didn't belong here. You didn't check their tickets thoroughly. You didn't follow protocol. You made an assumption." The accusation hung in the air, impossible to deny now. The evidence was in how quickly she'd moved to remove them, how little verification she'd actually attempted, how easily she'd threatened them with security. "Sir, I sincerely apologize." "Not to me," he interrupted. "To them." He gestured to his daughters, these two brilliant 12-year-olds who'd been humiliated in front of a cabin full of strangers, who'd had to defend their right to occupy space they'd legitimately purchased, who'd been seconds away from having their dreams derailed by someone's prejudice. The attendant turned to Maya and Mia, her face flushed with embarrassment. "Girls, I'm very sorry. I made an error in judgment." An error in judgment. Such careful words for something so ugly. Maya didn't respond. Neither did Mia. They were staring at their father, questions flooding their eyes. What was he doing here? Why hadn't he told them he was on their flight? And why was the attendant looking at him like he was someone important, someone powerful, someone she should have recognized? "Take your seats," their father said gently to them. "We'll talk once we're airborne." The girls moved numbly to 2A and 2B, sliding into the plush leather seats they'd been denied minutes earlier. Their father returned to 4D, settling back as if nothing had happened. But something had happened. Something big. The attendant disappeared toward the cockpit, her radio crackling with urgent, hushed conversation. Passengers whispered to each other, phones still out, fingers typing furiously. The woman in 3A kept glancing back at the girls, her expression now guilty rather than annoyed. Maya buckled her seatbelt with shaking hands. Beside her, Mia was crying silently, tears streaming down her face, all the fear and humiliation finally pouring out now that the immediate threat had passed. "We're okay," Maya whispered, squeezing her sister's hand. "We're okay." But she didn't feel okay. She felt raw, exposed, like something innocent had been stripped away. She'd known racism existed, had learned about it in school, and had heard stories. But knowing and experiencing were different countries entirely. The plane's engines rumbled to life. The captain's voice came over the intercom, apologizing for the delay, his tone suggesting he knew exactly what had caused it. As they began to taxi, Maya turned to look back at her father. He was staring out the window, his jaw still tight, his hands still gripping the armrests. He looked tired in a way she'd never seen before, like this moment had cost him something heavy. Who was James Richardson? And why had his name made the attendant's face drain of color? The answer to that question would change everything the girls thought they knew about their father. The plane leveled off at cruising altitude, the seatbelt sign blinking off with a soft chime. Maya hadn't touched the complimentary orange juice the new flight attendant, a young man with apologetic eyes, had practically thrust into her hands. Mia sat statue still beside her, staring at the clouds outside their window like they held answers. Their father unbuckled and moved up the aisle. He slid into the empty seat across from them, 2C, his large frame filling the space. Up close, Maya could see the exhaustion etched into the lines around his eyes, the tension that hadn't left his shoulders even after they'd taken off. "Dad, what are you doing here?" Mia's voice was small, confused. "You were supposed to meet us in Chicago." "I was on a different flight originally," he said quietly, his eyes moving between his daughter's faces. "But I changed it last minute. Wanted to surprise you. Thought I'd get to see your faces when you realized I was on board." His jaw clenched. "Didn't expect to see what I saw instead." Maya's throat tightened. "Why didn't you say something sooner? When she first stopped us, you just sat there." The question came out sharper than she'd intended, edged with hurt. He'd watched them struggle, watched them defend themselves, watched Mia's hands shake as she tried to explain they belonged there. Their father leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his hands clasped together. "Because you needed to advocate for yourselves first. You needed to find your voices, to stand your ground. I wanted to see if you could." He paused, pain flickering across his face. "And you did. You were magnificent. Both of you." "But it didn't matter," Maya said, her voice cracking. "She was going to kick us off anyway. Our voices didn't change anything." "They changed everything," he corrected gently. "You didn't back down. You asked the questions that needed asking. You made everyone in this cabin look at what was really happening. That takes courage most adults don't have." Mia wiped her eyes. "Dad, why did she react like that when she saw your name? Who are you?" The question hung between them. Their father, who left for business trips in simple clothes and came home tired. Their father, who helped them with math homework at the kitchen table and fixed their bikes in the garage. Their father, who'd always told them he worked in technology, but never elaborated. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card, sliding it across to Maya. She picked it up, her eyes scanning the text. Her breath caught. James Richardson, Chief Executive Officer, 𝐒𝐿 International. The words didn't make sense at first. Her brain couldn't connect the man who made terrible pancakes on Sunday mornings with the title printed on this card. 𝐒𝐿? Mia leaned over to read it, her eyes widening. "That's Dad. That's one of the biggest tech companies in the world." "It is," he confirmed simply. Maya's mind raced. 𝐒𝐿 International. She'd seen their logo everywhere. On phones, computers, and in commercials during the Super Bowl. They just opened a new headquarters in Chicago last year. She remembered seeing it on the news. A building that looked like it was made of glass and dreams, 50 stories of innovation that everyone said was changing how technology worked. "You're the CEO?" Maya's voice came out barely above a whisper. "This whole time?" "For 8 years now," he said. "Started in their software division 20 years ago, worked my way up. The board appointed me CEO when the company was struggling. We've grown 400% since then." Mia shook her head in disbelief. But you told us. You never acted like. Like what? Like I was important. A sad smile crossed his face. Because at home, I'm not the CEO of anything. I'm your father. I'm the man who burns toast and can't figure out how to work the new washing machine your mother bought. That's who I want to be with you. Maya thought about all those business trips. All those times he'd left in simple clothes with a single carry-on. Where were you really going? Board meetings in San Francisco. Product launches in London. Investor conferences in Tokyo. Factory openings in South Korea. He ran a hand over his face. I kept it private because I wanted you girls to have a normal childhood. I didn't want you growing up thinking wealth defined you, or that my position made you better than anyone else. I wanted you to work hard because you loved learning, not because you had a safety net. The attendant knew who you were, Maya said slowly, the pieces clicking together. That's why she looked like that. That's why she panicked. Their father nodded. 𝐒𝐿 contracts with this airline. We spend $40 million a year on corporate travel. I've been in meetings with their executive team. I've sat across from their CEO at charity dinners. His voice hardened. And that attendant just tried to remove my daughters from a flight based on nothing but the color of their skin. The weight of it settled over the girls. Their father wasn't just any passenger defending his children. He was someone with power, real power, the kind that could make or break careers with a phone call. What are you going to do? Mia asked quietly. Their father looked at them both for a long moment, something complex working behind his eyes. Pride mixed with pain, love tangled with rage at what they'd experienced. What do you think I should do? The question surprised them. He was asking them, trusting them to understand the implications, to think beyond their hurt feelings. Maya looked down at the business card still in her hands. James Richardson, 𝐒𝐿. A man who commanded boardrooms and moved markets. But also, simply, their dad. I don't know, she admitted. Then let me tell you what happens next, he said, pulling out his phone. And why that attendant supervisor is currently on their way to this plane right now. He turned the screen toward them. An email, sent 10 minutes ago, was copied to what looked like a dozen executives. The subject line read, Formal discrimination complaint, flight 2847. The plane suddenly felt smaller. The consequences bigger. Whatever happened next wasn't just about them anymore. It was about every child who'd been told they didn't belong. Every person who'd been judged before they could speak. Every family that had swallowed discrimination in silence because they didn't have the power to fight back. But the Richardson family had power. The question was how they'd use it. And whether justice would finally be served at 30,000 feet. The email sat on the screen like evidence at a trial. Maya reread it, her eyes catching on phrases that made her chest tighten. Racial profiling of minor passengers. Failure to verify credentials before confrontation. Threat of security removal without cause. Her father had documented everything, time-stamped and detailed, the way someone who'd fought battles like this before would know to do. You wrote this while we were taking off? Mia asked, her voice filled with something between awe and sadness. I started writing it the moment she refused to look at your boarding passes, their father said. I've learned that if you don't document discrimination when it happens, people will later claim it happened differently. They'll soften it, excuse it, explain it away. The overhead speaker crackled. Mr. Richardson, this is Captain Foster. Could you please come to the front of the cabin? Their father stood, buttoning his polo shirt like it was armor. Stay here. I'll be right back. Maya watched him walk toward the cockpit, his posture straight, purposeful. Through the gap in the curtain, she could see movement, people gathering. The original flight attendant stood there, her face blotchy and red. Next to her was an older woman in a more formal uniform, her expression grave. The captain had stepped out, his silver hair catching the cabin light. Do you think he'll get her fired? Mia whispered. Maya didn't answer. She was watching the passengers around them, the way the woman in 3A kept glancing back with guilt written across her features. The man in 5C who'd stood up earlier was typing furiously on his laptop, his face flushed. A teenage girl across the aisle had her phone out, clearly recording, her expression fierce. This is messed up, the teenager muttered to her mother beside her. "They're just kids. She didn't even check their tickets." Her mother nodded, her lips pressed tight. "I saw the whole thing. That attendant decided they didn't belong before she even spoke to them." The voices were getting louder now, passengers who'd stayed silent during the confrontation suddenly finding their opinions. Maya wondered where these voices had been 10 minutes ago when it mattered, when she and Mia stood alone in that aisle feeling like the whole world was against them. But she also wondered if that was fair. Speaking up was scary. Taking sides was risky. How many times had she seen something wrong and stayed quiet because getting involved felt too hard, too complicated? From the front of the cabin, raised voices carried back. Not shouting, but intense, clipped tones that suggested barely controlled emotion. I followed standard protocol. The attendant's voice cracked with desperation. "I had reason to suspect." "You had reason to suspect what?" Their father's voice cut through, calm but sharp as a blade. "That two children with valid boarding passes, proper identification, and legitimate purpose for travel didn't deserve to sit in seats I purchased for them? Tell me exactly what your suspicion was based on." Silence. "Because from where I was sitting," he continued, "I watched you refuse to examine their credentials. I watched you threaten them with security removal. I watched you make my daughters, two brilliant young inventors on their way to represent their school at a national convention, feel like criminals. So please, explain your protocol to me." Maya's hands clenched in her lap. She'd never heard her father sound like this, professional fury wrapped in controlled words. This was the voice that commanded boardrooms, that made executives nervous, that built an empire. The supervisor's voice joined in, apologetic, placating. "Mr. Richardson, I cannot express how sorry we are for this misunderstanding." "Stop calling it a misunderstanding." Their father's words came out harder now. "A misunderstanding is giving someone the wrong meal. This was discrimination. Say the word." Another pause. Maya could feel the tension radiating from the front of the plane like heat. "We will conduct a full investigation." The supervisor tried again. "The employee will face appropriate disciplinary action, and we'd like to offer you and your daughters." "I don't want vouchers or upgrades," he interrupted. "I want to know what happens to the next black family that boards your planes. The ones without a CEO for a father. The ones without the power to send emails to your executive team. What happens to them when your flight attendants make assumptions based on skin color?" The question echoed through the cabin. Passengers who'd been pretending not to listen stopped pretending. This wasn't about the Richardsons anymore. This was about every person who'd faced discrimination without recourse, without power, without anyone believing them. Have you ever wondered what would happen if you couldn't fight back? If you didn't have the resources, the connections, the title that made people listen? That's the reality for millions who face this treatment every single day. Drop a comment if you think every family deserves the same justice the Richardsons are fighting for right now. The teenage girl across the aisle stood up suddenly, her phone still recording. "Excuse me," she called toward the front. "I got the whole thing on video. The way she treated those girls, everything she said. You want to see it?" The supervisor's face went pale. "That won't be necessary." "I think it is necessary," the girl's mother said, standing beside her daughter. "I'm an attorney. What I witnessed was textbook discrimination. And if this airline thinks they can sweep this under the rug with an internal investigation, they're mistaken." More passengers began standing. The man in 5C, the one who'd initially seemed annoyed at the delay, raised his hand. "I'm a journalist. I'd like a statement from the airline about their discrimination policies." The woman in 3A stood slowly, shame coloring her cheeks. "I should have said something earlier. I'm sorry. I saw what was happening, and I stayed quiet because it wasn't my problem. But it was my problem. It's everyone's problem." The cabin had transformed from a space of silent complicity to something else entirely. Witnesses becoming advocates. Bystanders becoming allies. The attendant's face crumpled as she realized her actions weren't going to disappear into the anonymity of one more flight, one more forgotten incident. "I didn't mean," she started, her voice breaking. "I never meant to." "But you did," their father said quietly. Intent doesn't erase impact. The captain stepped forward, his face grave. Mr. Richardson, on behalf of this airline, I want to personally apologize to you and your daughters. This is not who we are as a company. Their father's laugh was bitter. Then who are you? Because from where I'm standing, this is exactly who you are when you think no one important is watching. He turned and walked back toward his daughters, leaving the captain, supervisor, and attendant standing in the front of the cabin, the weight of accountability finally settling on their shoulders. But as their father reached their seats, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and his expression changed, something between surprise and concern flickering across his features. What is it? Mia asked. He showed them the screen. A news alert. Someone had already posted about the incident on social media. The video from the teenage girl had somehow been uploaded mid-flight, tagged with the airline's name, and was spreading like wildfire. 300,000 views in 15 minutes. The world was watching now. And what happened next would determine whether this moment became another forgotten incident or the catalyst that finally changed something. The attendant appeared in the aisle, tears streaming down her face, walking toward them with shaking steps. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. The attendant stopped 3 feet from their seats, her mascara running in black streams down her cheeks. Her hands twisted together, ringing like she was trying to squeeze courage from her own fingers. The cabin had gone silent again, but this time it felt different. Expectant. Everyone was watching to see what happened when consequences finally caught up with prejudice. Mr. Richardson, she began, her voice hoarse. Girls. I need to, she swallowed hard. I need to apologize. Their father stood, positioning himself between the attendant and his daughters. Protective, but not aggressive. Go ahead. She looked past him to Mia and Mia, tears spilling faster now. I was wrong. Everything I did was wrong. I saw you and I made assumptions, terrible assumptions, and I didn't even realize I was doing it until... Her voice broke completely. Until it was too late. Mia felt something twist in her chest. Part of her wanted to accept the apology, to make this woman feel better, to smooth over the ugly moment the way she'd been taught to be polite, to be accommodating. But another part, the part that still burned with humiliation, stayed silent. You didn't just make assumptions, Mia said quietly, surprising everyone, including herself. You made us prove we belonged. You made us justify existing in a space we'd paid for. Do you know what that feels like? The attendant shook her head, tears dripping onto her uniform. It feels like no matter what we achieve, no matter how hard we work, someone will always see our skin before they see us. Mia's voice strengthened, years of watching her parents navigate a world that judged them channeling through her words. We won a national competition. We invented something that could help people. We earned these seats. But none of that mattered to you, did it? No, the attendant whispered. It didn't. And I'm so sorry. Their father's phone buzzed again. He glanced at it, his jaw tightening. The airline CEO just called an emergency board meeting. Your video has 500,000 views now. The company's stock has dropped 2% in 20 minutes. He looked at the attendant, not with anger anymore, but with something sadder. You're going to lose your job. You know that, right? She nodded, crying harder. I know. And you think that's unfair? The question hung in the air. The attendant looked up, confusion mixing with her grief. I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But I have 2 kids at home. I've worked for this airline for 12 years. I never meant to hurt anyone. But you did hurt someone, their father said gently. You hurt my daughters. You hurt every person of color who's been treated this way and had no power to fight back. Intent doesn't change impact. He paused, letting his words sink in. My daughters will carry this moment for the rest of their lives. Every time they walk into a space where they're the only black faces, they'll wonder if they're being judged before they even speak. That's what you gave them today. Mia felt tears prick her own eyes. He was right. Something had shifted inside her, something innocent that couldn't be put back. The world felt different now, more hostile, more exhausting. She'd have to armor herself for battles she hadn't known were coming. The woman in 3A stood up, her voice shaking but determined. I need to apologize too. Not to you, she said to the attendant, then turned to the girls. To you. I saw what was happening and I stayed quiet because it was easier. Because speaking up meant making myself uncomfortable. And that's its own kind of racism, isn't it? The silence that lets discrimination happen. The man in 5C, the journalist, lowered his laptop. I was annoyed. Can you believe that? I was annoyed at the delay, irritated that my flight was being held up. I didn't think about what you were experiencing. I just wanted to get to my destination. He shook his head, disgusted with himself. I'm sorry. I should have said something. One by one, passengers began standing. Not everyone, but enough. Offering apologies, expressing shame, and admitting their complicity in staying silent. The teenage girl who'd recorded everything walked over, holding out her phone to Mia. You want me to delete it? She asked. It's your story. Your choice whether the world sees it. Mia looked at the screen. Thousands of comments already, people sharing their own stories of discrimination, of being told they didn't belong. Some comments were angry, demanding that the attendant be fired. Others were reflective, people examining their own biases. A few were defensive, claiming racism was being exaggerated. She thought about her grandmother in Mississippi, who'd faced far worse and had no cameras to document it, no social media to amplify her voice. She thought about her parents, who'd worked twice as hard to get half as far, who'd taught their daughters to be twice as good to be seen as equals. Don't delete it, Mia said finally. People need to see this. Not to destroy her, she nodded at the attendant, but to understand what we face. What so many people face every single day. Their father's hand found her shoulder, squeezing gently. Pride radiated from his touch. The supervisor appeared again, her face ashen. Mr. Richardson, I have the CEO on the line. He'd like to speak with you personally. He took the offered phone, stepping aside. Mia watched him listen, his expression unreadable. Finally he spoke. Training isn't enough. You need systemic change. Independent oversight. Consequences that matter. And you need to hire people who look like my daughters into positions of power, so decisions like this one get caught before they happen. He paused. Yes, I'll consider remaining a client. But you're on notice. This can't happen again. He handed the phone back and returned to his daughters. They're implementing new protocols. Mandatory bias training for all staff. An external review of their discrimination policies. And they're creating a passenger advocacy board. They've asked me to sit on it. Will you? Mia asked. Their father looked at the attendant, still standing there, destroyed. Then at the passengers who'd finally found their voices. Then at his daughters, these two brilliant girls who'd stood their ground when the world tried to push them aside. Yes, he said. Because if we don't use our power to protect others, what's the point of having it? The attendant wiped her face, gathering what remained of her composure. For what it's worth, you're raising remarkable young women. They're going to change the world. They already are, their father replied. But as the attendant walked away, as the cabin slowly returned to normal, as passengers settled back into their seats with new awareness sitting heavy on their shoulders, Mia noticed something on her father's phone screen. Another alert. Another development. This story wasn't over yet. Not by a long shot. Something bigger was coming. Something that would take this moment of injustice and transform it into something none of them could have predicted. And it all started with a message that just popped up from the convention organizers in Chicago. They'd seen the video too. Their father's phone kept buzzing like a heartbeat that wouldn't slow down. Messages flooded in, one after another, lighting up the screen in rapid succession. Mia watched his expression shift from curiosity to surprise to something she couldn't quite name. Dad? She asked, concern creeping into her voice. He looked up, his eyes bright with an emotion that might have been tears. The National Junior Inventors Convention just contacted me. They've seen the video. All 12 million views of it. He swallowed hard. They want to feature your story in their opening ceremony. They're calling you two symbols of perseverance in the face of adversity. Mia's hand flew to her mouth. 12 million? 12.3 and climbing, the journalist from 5C called out, his laptop screen glowing. It's trending worldwide. The hashtag is justice at 30,000 feet. Major news outlets are picking it up. CNN wants an interview when you land. Mia's head spun. This morning, she'd been a regular 12-year-old worried about her presentation slides. Now she was part of something massive, something that had taken on a life beyond her control. Part of her wanted to shrink from it, to go back to being invisible. But another part, the part that had found her voice in that aisle, understood the weight of this moment. There's more, their father said quietly, reading another message. The airline just announced the flight attendant's termination. Effective immediately. They're also launching a company-wide investigation into discrimination complaints from the past 5 years. He paused. And they're offering you both a full scholarship fund. $50,000 each toward your college education. The cabin erupted in applause. Passengers stood, clapping, some wiping their own tears. The teenage girl who'd filmed everything was crying openly, her mother's arm around her shoulders. Even the captain emerged from the cockpit, his face solemn but proud, joining the ovation. Mia didn't feel victorious. She felt complicated, heavy. The attendant was fired, unemployed, her life upended. Yes, she'd done something wrong, something hurtful. But Mia kept thinking about what the woman had said. 2 kids at home. 12 years with the company. A mistake that would define the rest of her career, possibly her life. Is this what justice looks like? Mia asked her father quietly, her voice nearly lost beneath the applause. He sat down beside her, the clapping gradually fading as passengers returned to their seats. Sometimes justice is complicated, he said. That woman made a choice rooted in bias, conscious or not. Those choices have consequences. But you're right to feel conflicted. Empathy, even for those who've hurt us, is a mark of character. I don't want her to lose everything, Mia whispered. I just wanted her to see us. Really see us. Their father nodded slowly. Then maybe there's another way to handle this. He picked up his phone and typed quickly, his thumbs flying across the screen. I'm sending a message to the airline's CEO, suggesting that instead of just firing her, they require her to complete extensive bias training, to speak at their diversity workshops, to use her mistake as a teaching moment rather than just an ending. You think they'll listen? Mia asked. I'm about to find out. He hit send, the message disappearing into the digital void. The journalist leaned over his seat. Mr. Richardson, can I ask you something? Why are you advocating for leniency for someone who discriminated against your children? Their father looked at his daughters, these 2 young women who were teaching him as much as he'd taught them. Because my daughters just reminded me that the goal isn't destruction. It's a transformation. We don't heal racism by ruining lives. We heal it by changing hearts and minds. The words settled over the cabin like a blessing. The woman in 3A was crying again, but differently now. The man in 5C typed furiously, capturing every word. Mia's phone, which she'd silenced during takeoff, vibrated in her pocket. She pulled it out to find hundreds of notifications. Friend requests, messages from strangers, and news outlets requesting interviews. Her science teacher, Mr. Chen, had sent a text, proud of you. Both of you. You showed more courage in 10 minutes than most people show in a lifetime. Have you ever had to decide between revenge and redemption? Between making someone pay or giving them a chance to grow? That's the choice Mia and Mia faced at 30,000 feet, and what they decided next would show the world what true strength really looks like. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we're beginning our descent into Chicago. We should be on the ground in approximately 20 minutes. 20 minutes until they landed. 20 minutes until this became real in a way it hadn't been while suspended in the sky. The convention. The interviews. The spotlight that neither girl had asked for but now couldn't avoid. Their father's phone buzzed one final time. He read the message, his eyebrows rising. The CEO agreed. The attendant keeps her job contingent on completing a comprehensive bias training program and speaking publicly about her experience. She'll be on probation for a year. She gets a second chance, Mia said softly. Everyone deserves a second chance, their father replied. The question is what they do with it. Through the window, Chicago's skyline emerged from the clouds, all glass and steel and possibility. Somewhere down there, a convention center waited for two girls with an invention that could change lives. Somewhere down there, cameras were ready to capture their story. Somewhere down there, the world was watching to see what came next. But something else was waiting too. Something unexpected that would turn this story of discrimination into something bigger, something that would ripple far beyond a single flight, a single moment, a single family's fight for dignity. The wheels touched down with a gentle bump. They'd landed. But the real journey was just beginning. The plane taxied to the gate, the familiar ding of seatbelt signs filling the cabin. But nobody moved. Passengers sat quietly, processing what they'd witnessed, what they'd been part of. This wasn't just another flight anymore. It was a turning point, a moment that would stay with everyone who'd been present. Mia looked out the window at the Chicago skyline, her reflection staring back at her in the glass. She looked the same as she had this morning, same brown eyes, same cornrows her mother had braided the night before, same NASA t-shirt she'd worn because it made her feel brave. But something inside had shifted, hardened, and softened simultaneously. She felt older, wearier, but also stronger in a way she hadn't known she could be. "You okay?" her father asked, reading her silence. "I keep thinking about all the times this happens when there's no seal watching," Mia said slowly. "All the people who get removed from planes, kicked out of stores, questioned by police, just for existing in spaces other people think they don't belong in. They don't get apologies. They don't get scholarship funds. They just get hurt and humiliated, and then everyone moves on." Her father's hand found hers. "You're right. Most people don't have the platform we have. Most discrimination happens in the shadows, undocumented, unpunished. That's why this moment matters so much. Because your voice is going to reach millions of people. And maybe, just maybe, it'll make someone think twice before making assumptions. Maybe it'll give another young girl the courage to stand her ground." Mia wiped her eyes, her voice thick with emotion. "I was so scared, Dad. When she threatened to call security, I thought about that video we saw in history class. The one where the police dragged that man off the plane. I thought that was going to be us. I thought we were going to be another hashtag, another story people share and then forget." "But you didn't back down," their father said, his own eyes glistening. "Even when you were terrified, even when it felt like the whole world was against you, you stood there and demanded to be seen as human beings. That's not something I taught you. That's something inside you, something powerful and unbreakable." The gate agent's voice came through the speaker. "Mr. Richardson, please remain seated. We have some special guests waiting to greet you at the gate." Through the window, Mia could see a crowd gathering. News cameras. People holding signs. Convention organizers in matching blue shirts. Security was forming a perimeter to manage what looked like controlled chaos. "This is really happening," Mia breathed. Their father stood, helping his daughters gather their backpacks. As they moved toward the exit, passengers reached out, touching their shoulders, squeezing their hands, whispering encouragements. The woman from 3 pressed a business card into Mia's palm. "I'm a civil rights attorney. If you ever need anything at all, you call me." The journalist from 5C stopped them. "I'm writing this story for the Times. But I want to make sure I get it right. What do you want people to understand about what happened today?" Mia thought carefully, aware that her words would reach far beyond this airplane. "I want people to understand that racism isn't always burning crosses and hate speech. Sometimes it's assumptions. It's seeing someone and deciding who they are before they speak. It's making people prove they belong in spaces they have every right to occupy." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "And I want people to know that speaking up is terrifying. It's so much easier to stay quiet, to accept unfair treatment, to make yourself smaller so others feel comfortable. But we can't keep doing that. We have to find our voices, even when they shake." Mia added softly, "And I want people to remember that behind every viral video, every hashtag, every news story about discrimination, there are real people. People with feelings and dreams and families. We're not just content with your timeline. We're children who deserved better." The journalist nodded, typing rapidly. Thank you. The world needs to hear this. As they reached the exit, the flight attendant who'd brought them orange juice appeared one last time. I just want you to know, he said quietly, what you did today changed me. I've worked for this airline for 5 years. I've seen things, small things, that didn't sit right with me. But I stayed quiet because it wasn't my place to get involved. After today, I'm never staying quiet again. Their father shook his hand. That's how change happens. One person at a time, deciding to do better. They stepped off the plane into a wall of sound. Camera flashes. Questions shouted from reporters. Convention organizers rushing forward with flowers and certificates. But through the chaos, Mia saw her mother, tears streaming down her face, arms outstretched. Mom. Both girls cried simultaneously, breaking away from their father and running into her embrace. Linda Richardson held her daughters like she'd never let go, sobbing into their hair. I saw the video. I was at work and someone showed me and I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. I'm so sorry I wasn't there. We're okay, Mom, Mia said, even though she wasn't sure if that was true. We're okay. But as they stood there in the airport terminal, cameras capturing every moment, Mia realized something profound. They weren't just okay. They were part of something bigger than themselves now. Their pain had become purpose. Their humiliation had sparked conversation. Their courage had inspired action. A young black girl, maybe 7 years old, broke through the crowd clutching a homemade sign that read, "Thank you for being brave." Her mother tried to pull her back, but the girl was determined. I saw your video, the little girl said to Mia and Mia, her voice clear and strong despite her size. My teacher showed us in class. She said you're heroes. Mia knelt to the girl's level. This child who reminded her of herself just a few years ago, still innocent, still believing the world was fair. You know what makes someone a hero? Mia asked gently. It's not being unafraid. It's being scared and standing up anyway. Remember that, okay? When someone tells you that you don't belong somewhere, you look them in the eye and you prove them wrong just by existing. The little girl nodded solemnly, like she was receiving sacred wisdom. Her mother mouthed "thank you" over her daughter's head, tears in her own eyes. A convention organizer approached with a microphone. The media is requesting a brief statement. You don't have to if you're not ready. Their father looked at his daughters. Your choice. Always your choice. Mia and Mia exchanged a glance, that twin telepathy that didn't need words. They'd started this journey just wanting to present their invention, to share their idea for bringing clean water to communities in need. But somewhere between takeoff and landing, their mission had expanded. We'll do it, Mia said. They walked to the cluster of microphones, flashbulbs exploding like stars. Mia's hands shook as she gripped Mia's, but her voice came out steady. Today we learned that racism is still alive and well in places we didn't expect it. But we also learned that silence enables discrimination, and that speaking up, even when your voice shakes, can change everything. She paused, looking directly into the cameras, knowing her words would reach millions. If you've ever been told you don't belong, we see you. If you've ever had to prove your worth based on the color of your skin, we stand with you. And if you've ever stayed silent when you witnessed injustice, we challenge you to do better. Mia stepped forward, adding, we're just two 12-year-old girls who wanted to fly to a science convention. We shouldn't have had to become activists to be treated with basic respect. But since that's the world we live in, we're going to use our voices to make sure this doesn't happen to the next child. To anyone. The reporters erupted with questions, but their father raised a hand. My daughters have said what they needed to say. Now they have an invention to present and a convention to change the world at. Because that's what they came here to do. As they walked away from the microphones, toward the convention center where their presentation waited, Mia felt the weight of the day settling into her bones. She was exhausted, emotionally drained, forever changed. But she was also awake, aware, armed with the knowledge that her voice mattered, that her existence was resistance, that her success would be the best response to everyone who'd ever doubted she belonged. The convention center doors opened before them, revealing an auditorium filled with young inventors from across the country. And as Mia and Mia walked down that aisle toward the stage, toward their moment to shine, every person in that room stood. Not because of a viral video, not because of the news coverage, but because two girls had refused to be made invisible, had demanded to be seen, had turned their pain into power. And that, Mia realized, was the real victory. The standing ovation in that convention center lasted 4 minutes and 37 seconds. Mia counted, her heart thundering in her chest, overwhelmed by the sea of faces looking at her and Mia with something that felt like reverence. These were their peers, young inventors and scientists and dreamers who understood that what had happened on that plane could have happened to any of them. That in a different context, with different circumstances, they too could have been judged, dismissed, told they didn't belong. When the applause finally faded, Mia and Mia presented their solar-powered water purification system. They explained the science, demonstrated the prototype, and shared their vision of bringing clean water to communities that needed it most. And when they finished, the judges awarded them first place. Not because of the video, they insisted, but because their innovation was brilliant, necessary, and achievable. But Mia knew the truth was more complicated. The video had opened doors. It had given them a platform. It had made people pay attention in ways they might not have otherwise. And while she wished they'd earned that attention through their work alone, she was learning that sometimes the path to recognition wasn't fair, wasn't clean, wasn't what you'd choose. Sometimes you had to fight just to get to the starting line. That night, in their hotel room with their mother and father, the girls finally exhaled. The adrenaline faded, leaving exhaustion in its wake. Mia's phone continued buzzing with messages, interview requests, and people wanting pieces of their story. But for now, they were just a family, sitting together, processing everything that had happened. "I'm proud of you," their mother said, her voice thick with emotion. "Not because you won the convention. Not because you handled those reporters perfectly. But because when the world tried to make you small, you refused to shrink." Their father added, "What you did today will echo beyond today. You sparked conversations in homes across the world. You made people examine their own biases. You gave courage to others who've faced similar treatment. That's bigger than any invention, any award, any headline." Mia leaned against her mother's shoulder, feeling every bit of her 12 years and somehow ancient all at once. "I just wanted to fly on a plane and present our project." "I know, baby," her mother whispered, kissing her forehead. "I know." 3 months later, the airline implemented sweeping policy changes. 6 months after that, Mia and Mia testified before Congress about discrimination in public spaces. A year later, their water purification system was being manufactured and distributed to 12 countries. And 5 years later, when Mia stood at a podium accepting her first patent as a 17-year-old inventor, she began her speech with these words. "When I was 12 years old, someone told me I didn't belong in first class. Today, I'm telling every young person watching, you belong everywhere your dreams and hard work take you. Don't let anyone's limited vision define your unlimited potential." The Richardson sisters didn't set out to become civil rights advocates. They just wanted to be seen as human beings deserving of respect. But sometimes that's all it takes to change the world. One voice, one moment, one refusal to accept injustice as inevitable. Their story wasn't unique. Discrimination happens every single day, in airports and stores and schools and streets, to people who don't have cameras documenting it, who don't have CEOs for fathers, who don't have platforms to fight back. The Richardsons were lucky in their power, but they were unlucky in needing to use it. The real question is what comes next. What we all do with the awareness their story created. Because knowing racism exists isn't enough. Feeling bad about it isn't enough. Even punishing individual acts of discrimination isn't enough. We need systemic change. We need people in positions of power who look like Mia and Mia. We need children raised to see humanity before color. We need adults willing to examine their biases and do the uncomfortable work of growth. We need bystanders who become allies, witnesses who become advocates, and silence that transforms into solidarity. Thank you for watching this story, for staying with Mia and Mia through every painful, powerful moment of their journey. If you believe fairness and equality aren't just ideals but necessities, hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to the Hyper Racism channel for more stories that expose discrimination and celebrate courage. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think racial discrimination and prejudice can truly end? What would it take to make that happen? Is serving justice to individual offenders enough? Or do we need deeper, more fundamental changes to how our society operates? Have you witnessed discrimination and stayed silent, or spoken up? What made the difference? Tell us your opinion in the comments. Share your own experiences. Because every voice matters. Every story adds to the chorus demanding change. And if you want racism to become a thing of the past in our country and world at large, if you want to be like Maya and Mia, educating others and raising awareness, then share this video and subscribe to this channel. Together, we can turn painful moments into powerful movements. Together, we can ensure that no child ever again has to prove they belong in a seat they paid for, in a space they have every right to occupy, in a world that should celebrate rather than question their existence. The Richardson family changed their corner of the world. Now it's our turn to change ours. What will you do with your voice?